Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Cosmic History Codes. This is episode number 6. My name is David Farrell. I'm your co-host for today. And as always, I'm joined by my wonderful teacher and guide from the Stellar Nations Pathway, Leslie Shankman. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
I'm staying on the surfboard, David.
Right. Yeah, it's been some pretty big surf recently out there. And as me and Bella were talking about on our Quantum Compass show that just came out as well, the surf is big, but it's also, I think, very, very interesting. And we're now doing the next installment of our Cazimi Crazy series that we've been doing here on the Cosmic History Codes since earlier in the year. And at this point, Leslie, I think we're coming also to the end of something and the beginning of something, but the end of something that you flagged up some time back, which was this incredible 40-day journey we've been on since the total solar eclipse to the upcoming Jupiter Cazimi. Now, today we're filming a few days ahead of that, and yesterday we had the Uranus Cazimi, which actually seemed to fly under the radar, I felt, for a lot of people, but I thought it was super powerful. I felt really good all day and still very much in that energy. So I know that we have a lot to talk about today. We've been tracking the process and progress, we can say, of Solana, El Sol, the sun, and what he's been up to. And he's been pretty busy recently, as the recent geomagnetic solar storms and solar flares have been showing us. But what is it really all about? Well, hopefully today we're going to try and decode the message of Solana and the other planets and what is going on in relation to the stellar nation stars. So, Leslie, as always, I know you've got a wonderful presentation for us, but where would you like to begin today's episode?
Well, before I bring up the slides, which are very specific to the Jupiter Cazimi, we'll delve into that. I feel like we are creating a cosmic series here, kind of a Netflix series, and there is some,
Right.
necessity of understanding the context, and I don't want to keep repeating it, but in a few sentences, when we've been tracking these Cazimis, you mentioned it earlier in the year, and I suddenly thought, like, wait a minute. Our sun Solana was given the chance to create the solar system as a return to his original fate or destiny, because he's actually an eighth Pleiadian star who, at another Aquarian age, he was analogous to an adolescent and had that young masculine energy, perceived his fate as very boring. He watched his father, who he equates with Saturn, because when he got to set up the solar system to return to his fate, the planets are actually either members of his Pleiadian family or pieces of his own psyche. So that's kind of the way we've been looking at things. And he perceived his fate as very boring. Oh, he just stands there. I don't want to be a box. So in that teenage roiling, he left his fate. Now he's understanding after all these amazing millennia that to orchestrate all these energies is not boring. And in fact, really, the truth of what his father was saying to him, what he was being trained in, is he was to be a gear of evolution, to be a reliable kind of channel for all the movement of the creativity of constant creation, really, which is what we're really, as we move into a fifth dimensional perspective, that's what we're really realizing. Wait a minute, we're in the moment and creation's coming to us and we flourish out. So at any rate, this is all a huge kind of metaphor, as well as perhaps in actuality, a mythical metaphor. But we're going to continue today. What I just want to bring up that we last left on the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction,
Jupiter. Right.
we talked about how Mars kind of represented a younger, perhaps, version of the masculine, much more like Solana when he left. And Saturn represents the adult yang quality. And we talked about the maturation of the masculine, and we compared Saturn. Saturn was in Pisces then, and he actually Mars and Saturn sat together in one of our last shows, and the stars were very instructive. It's like a father-son conversation. And they were looking at one of the Phoenix stars, which was saying, oh, yes, you're in a very deep, dark tunnel, but there is light ahead. You know, it really bespeaks the death and rebirth process, which is this is all about, because we started with the Pluto Cazimi. It was just right away the death and rebirth process. We're finding the rebirth. And that's very much what we're going to see in Jupiter today with that Cazimi. But yeah, so Saturn is actually still holding that star of the Phoenix. There was a light at the end. And he's also holding another star they talked about then, which is of huge initiation, of being able to pierce the darkness with your light and literally get out of the sarcophagus because your consciousness can pierce the dark. So Saturn's the dutiful father holding that. Now Mars has been running through a lot of his inner psyche in Pisces. He's now out in Aries. This will all play in today's show, but I just wanted to give a little background that we're really chasing or looking at this huge metaphor that's only going to be continued. So what are the pieces these planets are representing? Actually, it's all inside of us too. Every star is inside of us. In this whole supposition, one last thing for context is every star is a sentient being. It's a point of consciousness. It's a cell in our larger light bodies. We have aspects of our soul living on different stars, learning and living and evolving on those stars. And they're concurrently streaming down their information to us, especially since 2007, because our sun used to be just the sole orchestrator of letting in all the stellar rays as they came along. They conjunct the sun, they would go into the solar system and hit us, let's say, on our Jupiter or our Mars. But ever since 2007, as we've come deeper into the photon belt, all that light is coming in. We are learning we need to learn how to make that coherent and understand that we're part of this bigger consciousness. So I think that's enough as a background. So we're going to go from there.
Just to add to something you said there, Leslie, which I feel is possibly one of the most important keywords we can have in our awareness right now, is coherency. And what I love about stellar nations, also in conjunction with the minds, time, stuff that I do with Bella, but also with astrology in general, is everything, when you start to give it the undue attention and focus that it deserves, it becomes more coherent and we start to go inwards. And, you know, when you're talking about the journey of the sun, I also think that's the journey of humanity. It's like, as we witness the collapsing of the old paradigm or the matrix, in many ways, that's like mum and dad. They gave us the structure and the system. It's like, well, it's not perfect and you have to do what we say, but we're giving you something that makes sense until you can work out how to do it yourself. And I kind of think that that's a more genteel way of looking at the collapse of the old paradigm in the matrix and saying, thank you very much for everything that you gave us. Yes, it wasn't designed to serve us per se, but it did kind of work and it gave us a point of reference. But now that we've grown up and we're getting to our 18th birthday, a bit like Solano, who I really identify with in his youthfulness, to be honest, I kind of sense that we're being given that opportunity at the fractal level to be coherent within ourselves here on planet Earth, with our sun, with our galactic center, all of those things. It feels like we're coming into this kind of, we could say like another harmonic convergence almost, I feel.
It is. I was calling it adulting in the other shows. Solana's adulting as we come into a newest Aquarian age. I mean, I get a kick out of that word. Younger people use it. I have younger kids, 30s.
Younger people.
Right. I'm older. So, yeah, adulting, but we're adulting too, just like you said. But I would say that our first age of real maturation is 28. Well, beginning. And then really after our Uranus return is full adulting, which is interesting because we just had Uranus and Jupiter come together.
Or another one I like is the 52 year mark, which is the Chiron return, but it's also your kind of first Zolkin, your 52 years. And it's like, I understand now that as you enter that 52nd year, you've done your Chiron return 2 years previously, generally speaking. And it's like, that's your final initiation into being like, not just an adult, but maybe an elder or a mature person or someone who's got some level of worldly experience and can make better informed decisions. And I like that idea. It's like the Chiron return is almost like your final initiation test. It's like, have you learned everything or are you still carrying some of that BS from before? Have you still got some of that wounding that needs looking at? And this is where the Stellar Nations pathway gives us the opportunity to not just look into this life, but also from our previous soul experiences, because we are still carrying all of those codes, as you said many times. We're existing multidimensionally in multiple locations all at once, and we can experience any of those by putting our attention to them. And that's what the stellar nations codes and the stars give us, I think. So I love what you say when you kind of say that all of the stars have consciousness and that they have their own sentience. And my wonderful teacher, Davyd Leslie, who taught me magic, he said, Davyd, everything has consciousness and can be communicated with. Some things are a little more responsive than others, of course, but everything has an intelligence that can be communicated with. Don't ever forget that. And I think that's really important as we move forward for our sense of the oneness.
Okay, and just remember, though, particularly in talking to your stars, the stars, you're literally talking to yourself.
Right, exactly. That's what I love about it. It's like the coherency is there. It's like, hey, I'm having a conversation with myself and I'm learning about myself through learning about the stars. I think that's so beautiful.
Right. So, okay, let's just dive in, because as usual, there's so many messages here. So I've tried to hone it down, and we'll go along with the
This is where I get to take a back seat, get out the popcorn. No subversives at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm still in healing mode, but otherwise I probably would. And I get to enjoy the movie that Leslie's put together for us.
Okay, just a second. I'll get it up. Oh, sorry, that wasn't on slideshow.
I love this image. I think it's so very symbolic of the moment that we're in. And it feels very much to me like that.
It is. We could stop now. We could leave this image on the screen and say, okay, just look at this for an hour and get it.
Right.
No more words, because in essence, this is really even what Saturn and Mars were talking about. You know, Saturn was saying, son, it's really hard now. We're in a deep darkness. There is a light in the tunnel. There is rebirth. That's what the cosmic laws and the divine has told us, versus feeling that there's not. And, you know, we are very much at a choice point now, and that'll become more clear as we talk about the stars. But this image does kind of hold it all. Okay, so we know from looking at the astrological radix, there's so much going on May 18th, the Jupiter Cazimi, and we've got the Sun and Jupiter together. We've got Venus and Uranus together. We've got the North Node and Mars together. And then, very interestingly, opposite Jupiter and the Sun is Pallas Athene. Now, we're not going to look at this totally astrologically, because we're going to look at the messages of the stars, which tell a story. And the way I'd like to approach this, I kind of highlighted the grouping. This is, if you got an Antares code, this is what it would look like. It would be the Sun and the different stellar.
Never go anywhere without my Antares code, Leslie.
Yeah. Right. Kind of your map, right?
Right.
Your GPS system. So these are the soul families that comes through in the star, the degrees. But yes, what was I? I lost my train. Anyway, I grouped what we're going to look at. And I actually want to start with Mars on the North Node, because I feel like this sets a tone. It's part of the underlying message. And it also offers a continuity, because on the eclipse, the moon was on the North Node. And one of the same stars has been consistently on the North Node, and then whatever meets it. So we had the moon in the North Node on the eclipse, April 8th, which is also a Chiron Cazimi. On the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, we had Mercury on the North Node. Now we have Mars on the North Node. So the North Node being that whole idea of, oh, where are we going to? Destiny. What is the light at the end of the tunnel? Let's look at the stars for that, right? Because there's a certain consistency here. And I feel like that's a little bit of the underlying message. And then we are going to look at Pallas Athene at the end. It's really important. Today we're looking at really deep, we're looking at brilliant light, and we're looking at some of the shadows that have to be dissolved for that light to come into its full radiance. Okay, so as I said, we're going to start with a North Node in Mars, and I'm just going to do that with some slides. So we have this coming through the radix for us on that day, meaning on this globe. So this is what's coming into our collective unconscious as humanity. Alderman is a whale star at 1310 of Aries. It's right at kind of the edge of the ethereal ocean of light. The ethereal ocean of light is a sea of light in the galaxy that has stars from the 5th to the 7th dimension largely, and their light sets off such a beautiful tone. And it's a place that's much closer to the divine mind. And you tend to have the whales, the Pegasus, and the dolphin parts of ourselves in the ethereal ocean. So what this star represents is this is where us as cosmic humans can start to connect to the ethereal ocean of light. We're suddenly getting the idea of, oh, there's a meaning to this celestial heavenly scene. And as far as the coming ascension, Alderman is actually a gate to step into this plane of existence. And our allies are very much the parts of ourselves that are the whales, the dolphins, and the Pegasus. And the next star is Alpheratz, and it actually has the Pegasus, the dolphins, and the whales coming through it on the Jupiter Cazimi day and around then. So this Alpheratz, we met before actually on April 8th on the eclipse. It was, as I said, part of the moon in the North Node, and then it was part of Mercury in the North Node on April 20th, Jupiter Uranus. Now, what is Alpheratz? It's basically, this represents it as a Pegasus nation experience. Pegasus being the messengers part of ourselves who hears messages from the divine mind and is really tasked with taking those messages as living news into different environments and planting the seeds or the frequencies of it. So Alpheratz is actually a star that has 4 launching pads on it. And we went into this in more detail in another show. I won't do all the pads, but basically the Pegasus soul, we show up in the costuming that we need to for the world we're going to with the message. And we launch from one of those pads based on the dimension we're going to. Where are we delivering this message? To what frequency? You know, 3rd, 4th dimension, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or to another Pegasus star. So let's think of this as a launching, because I think that's part of the message. We can launch. We are multidimensional. We can hear the divine mind. We can help each other. And actually, all of this happens in ourselves first. We can realize that we connect the pieces of ourselves inside that we think are so disparate, especially the different stellar pieces. And then when we do, we realize, oh my goodness, we're one contiguous light body. You know, our physical body is actually like a distillate of that we've incarnated. So Alpheratz also has the whales coming through it. And the stellar nations, it's part of the whole background story. But whales are awakened beings, and they're born and they arrive with an awakened consciousness. They've earned it. That's part of the background story. But from Alpheratz, a whale can launch with a divine message and go through the teleportation bridge that it needs to go to whatever dimension it's going to, but it doesn't decrease the vibrational level by moving itself into another dimension. It keeps its higher connection with the divine mind. That's part of the gift of what a whale is bringing down. It doesn't lose its memory or have a consciousness narrowing. And so whales as a part of ourselves, and literally in the ethereal ocean or in our ocean as beings, are here to complete their own destiny. They're very much on a pathway. They're metamorphosizing very close to completing their own destiny. They're here to teach us as humans how to experience mercy and redemption and how to take care of the planet. And the dolphins that come through Alpheratz singing in the waters of that star, they're reinforcing the message of stellar consciousness for all these, for the whale and the Pegasus who are going out on mission. They're singing the frequency in that these departing beings can keep. It's that frequency of helping us elevate our consciousness from the little human idea to an understanding that we're a much broader consciousness. We're well beyond our everyday consciousness. So this star helps us realize who we really are. Now, that's coming through the North Node, and I would argue with Mars here now. We said Mars was kind of the ego part of Solana's psyche and needed to mature a little bit. I'm feeling like his journey through Pisces and coming out now, there's this message of, well, I'm really getting it. I'm starting to adult into my truer purpose, which, oh, and there's one other star. It's an arthropod star. The arthropods just have a web that collects all the information of what's happening and sends to the creator. And there are certain stars that transfer that information. This is a star that's being used correctly in line with what the divine intention is. So that's really beautiful too.
You know what, Leslie, just to add something to that, maybe some of our audience also felt this, but when Mars left Pisces and entered Aries, it was one of the most profound energetic shifts I felt for a while. And we were in the last few days of the blue night wave spell and about to move into the yellow warrior. So at first I perceived it was that, but on reflection, I'm like, no, but Mars in Pisces was such a strange experience, particularly having Mars in Scorpio, which is my zodiac sign. I feel Mars strongly, but to move into Aries, it was like, wonk, okay, down, out of a dreamy space. I've gone through my sort of almost dark night of the soul process. I met Daddy, dealt with my daddy problems, and I've met Poseidon over here, and he's taken me through the fog of illusion for a few days, and it was all a bit. And now I'm in Aries. I'm like back on home territory. And when Mars entered into Aries, the sense of like coming down into a more sort of 3D from the more sort of, we can say, 4D blue night energy of Pisces and Neptune was palpable. And I think that like what you just said was really resonated with me. It's like that Mars has now got a new sense of himself, having gone through that process, tidying up some of his messy bits in Pisces and saying, hey, now I feel like I have a new mission, but I want to pick up more information about myself so I can understand myself better, which is really Mars in Aries energy, I would say.
Yeah, and I can tell you stellar-wise what was happening as Mars went through Pisces, he was meeting a series of Pegasus stars. So he was getting back in touch of that whole higher mind messenger self, having a mission, something to do. And right before he left at the last degree, when it was on Neptune, he touched into the Pegasus star Shiat, which is an incredible, it's where you go to get your assignment, right? Then he bursts into Aries and he comes out of the belly of the whale. So Bait and Kados is we're going to get into that. We've seen it in the past. It was out in the eclipse. It's all over the place still on different planets. It's on Chiron today, the 18th. It's so coming out of Bait and Kados, which is like a galactic redemption center, a chamber of mirrors, a chance to have a time out and say, hey, I want to return. Mars was born. I mean, he came out of the star at the tail of the Cetus constellation, right at the beginning of Aries. So there was sort of a very symbolic, like, whoa, maybe there's a choice been made here, right? Towards all this that he's been looking at consciously.
Right. And also that 29th degree of Pisces, as I think was shared in the quantum compass, the Sabian symbol was or is a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, of course, 29 degrees of Pisces is pretty much the end. So you'd hope there might be a butterfly emerging from all of those 359 other degrees, right? But I still think it was a beautiful kind of image to take forwards with that Mars journey through Pisces. And
Oh,
I
it
feel like
is.
very much with us still. I feel his energy of like, hey, let's get going. There's something exciting is
Right.
waiting to happen here.
Well, literally, Diptha is the rebirth of the fallen angel from the belly of Bait and Kados, the belly of the Cetus, and it's the rebirth into the light body of the whale. And the whale is totally realized and compassionate, but still a little bit metamorphosizing on its way back.
Right.
So yes, it's an amazing thing to think that Mars kind of came through that. And now his North Node is saying, oh, I want to launch. I want to take the divine message around. I can understand that this is where there's a gate here towards the ethereal ocean, towards the higher worlds, that we could actually live there in our consciousness with the Alderman. So that's what we're seeing now with Mars and the North Node. Now we're going to move into what we're seeing on the actual Cazimi of the Sun and Jupiter. And there's a lot of stars here, so I try to make it, we'll be concise. 5 of these stars are Pleiadian stars, 5 of the 7 sisters. So this is a real kind of reunion and a retrospective thing for Solana as well. And then we've got Algol, which we'll fold this all in as we go along step by step. So I want to say now we're going to look at Jupiter and the Sun together and all the stars. So we could say that Jupiter, remember, everything in our solar system, the planets were part of his psyche or his family. So Jupiter really was Solana's inner sense of his expanded celestial self. As a young adolescent, it was like, this is what I want to go do. But as a maturation point, his understanding, wait, this is kind of like my soul, my essence. I want to be this. This is what my true fate is, and I want to grow into it. So let's think of Jupiter like that now. And also From Stellar Destinies, a book that catalogs just so much. It's like 800 pages. It literally got released last week. We'll put it in the show notes. But we learn a lot about the correspondences on the galactic scene. And Jupiter is very much representative of the energy that comes out of the Orion constellation, which is Orion constellation has a lot to do with the galactic laws and how things are ordered. The divine mind kind of comes through a lot of that. But just like that energy, Jupiter serves as the governor of the highest divine truths within the solar system. And Jupiter is the shining teacher and the master archetype of a high-level initiator of human consciousness. So when I said in the beginning, we have that picture of the light on one side and the not light on the other. This is like, let's choose the tunnel with the light at the end, because we are literally being invited. We're being escorted into this whole new place, because with the 5 Pleiadian stars there, we can know that the Pleiadian cities of light, they're literally cities of light, okay? These are places, our souls live there, right? Or we are not on all the stars, but yes, we can feel them. I mean, we may be, in the history of our soul, more on some than others. So the Pleiadian cities of light manifest spiritual ideas that reflect the purest vibrational levels that we can possibly reach directly at the present time. And this is our invitation on this Cazimi, right? And they show us the way. So in the process of ascension, we'll return to the cosmic embrace of the Pleiades first, which makes total sense, because we're the family in our solar system on Earth, especially, we're the family of their little brother, who they just have been crying out to with such love for a long time.
You know what, Leslie? Sorry, just I want to reinforce that point. What you just said is really beautiful. Jupiter is a high-level initiator of human consciousness, and in the process of the ascension, the 40-day journey that Jesus also took after he left the rock tomb, he was here for another 40 days before he ascended. And I think that what you're showing us here is the invitation, the real invitation that is open to us, that Jupiter and the Sun are offering us on this particular day. It's like, do you want to step into your ascension process or not? I think it's really quite clear that there's an opportunity and an invitation.
Yes, a very deep, direct one from the stars. And we might even say that the eclipse opened up this portal, just like as the Christ did in dying, like open up a bridge between the 3rd and the 5th dimension, and holding it open, coming back for those days, then ascending finally. But actually, we learned that through a book called Calling You, where the Holy Family and the Christ consciousness in the year of the Bears, 2012, showed Bayononico the whole trajectory of the development of Christ consciousness from Lemurian times to the present, and development of Christ consciousness in this solar system. That was a frequency that was introduced actually really to bring us the possibility of coming back to the light.
Right, beautiful.
And it's really blossoming now. I mean, it's a frequency planted, through different souls. But with the Christ coming through the Jesus incarnation, it was really planted in very specific ways. And it's been sort of humming along as we've gone through such darkness. We've been in the dark of the photon belt. But as we've entered the photon belt, all those frequency seeds planted in our heart and elsewhere are really starting to blossom. But the neat thing about this is to realize, when you use the word coherency before, there is a definite energetic pattern for all this. We just need to, we are that, and we just kind of need to recognize it and embody it, and move into it. We don't have to invent it. It's more like accepting our fate as being those gears of evolution. Oh, let it come through us. Let the divine or the divine mind express. That's what it wants to do. And we're the agents of that.
Well, coherency comes through the fractality, I think, Leslie. Once we perceive that we are part of a natural organic fractal system, and we stop trying to resist against that, and we allow ourselves to go back into the flow, then we're just part of that synchronistic flow of events that just seems to keep adding and adding. And this is, as you all know, some of the wonderful work of Jose Arguelles is it doesn't matter where you come into his work from in the Mayan system, it's always coherent, it's always making sense, it always fills the fractal picture, which isn't necessarily true of the Gregorian system. So I feel like this is a big invitation to step back into our organic, natural selves, and in doing so, remember our true selves. So, I mean, this is what everybody signed up for, I think, right? This is why we're all here.
Definitely. We just have to we're getting the little reminders and the direct invitations now. Right. And I will just say this briefly, what I highlighted here, it's that we can understand that with the Pleiadian stars, we have to understand they went through a choreography of deep descent. So especially the Pleiadians are very much representing the feminine and the goddess, the seven sisters. And so they're archetypes for the feminine we really haven't had, but they are also archetypes of the deep descent of the feminine in different ways. And that was during the dark night, and they eventually reached a turning point, started upwards seeking the light, and finally lifted themselves to complete this. They're cities of light now. They have their own seeds of spiritual wisdom. That's why with this invitation, now it's like, oh my gosh, there is so much we can receive. So as they conclude here, we can be aware that the confessions of these stars are great living examples for us. They carry the certainty that it's possible to be freed from any shadow quality and ascend into the light. That's our promise. So I'm not going to do justice like this book does to these 5 stars, but let's get an idea. What are we being invited into? Right. Now, the first one, Alcyone actually is the great central sun. It has never left the light of the photon belt, so it doesn't have that same journey. And that is there for us steadily. And what we've got is, I'm just going to go really quickly. There's a lot of words here, many more words and much more depth in the book. But Alcyone literally has a central sanctuary where the what do you call it? Of life.
Oh, the flower of life.
Yeah, I'm blanking. There's a seed, there's the fruit. This is the flower. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's on the floor. And if you enter the sanctuary here, there's 4 different communities. They all work in concert. There's no sense of hierarchy. This is a 5th dimensional reality, even 5th, 6th. And there are guards at the gate of each one of these communities. When you go in with a question here, it's like, if you're blessed to interact with Alcyone, and we may be doing this a lot in our unconscious, in our lives, you may be pulled into one of these communities. And so if we have aspects of our soul here, we're literally on Earth shepherding with some of this knowledge, if we remember it. Or we have an intermission. We do certain things, we don't know why, but we're literally a delegate of something up here. Or maybe someone in our life is helping us and they're a Pleiadian delegate. And I don't know, you've said before about I almost feel like it's our future selves, essentially, because they've gone through the fall that we have, they've made their way back, kind of guiding us, right? So you've got the blue group or community. It's never sure how to say it. Pot, fat. Now their whole purpose is to bring down and anchor energies into manifestation. They literally operate energy fields and connect fifth and sixth dimensional realities to the third. They harmonize and heal our etheric body. Our etheric body is our blueprint, which holds the codes of our life plan in a holographic form. And the Fought group works all the time with Syrian energy, with a Sirius, because Syrian is all about bringing things into manifestation. So then we've got the red or the Mott community, and the beings here control the eternal battle of light and shadow, and they help us distinguish between shadow light, between illusion reality. They know, these parts of ourselves know all the black and white magical powers, and we, I can't see it. They help us make the choice for light over the shadow. And they also have, there's a whole sense, the great felines come through here too. Sword of Justice is a part of Alcyone from the Mac group. And they help us apply the sword of justice. And that's the bigger sense of not revenge on the little level, but what is the right, cosmic karmic balances? When do you apply the sword of justice? And they also help, so they help with decision making and that kind of things. And they help with fears and also with the whole birth process. They're very much in relationship to our physical body, whereas the Fought group is more in relation to our etheric body. Now, on the yellow, that is the, can you read that? Is that the Ra? It's my...
It's the Ra community,
yeah,
yes.
it's being hidden by something. So this is like where a complete Akashic library of the solar system and other fifth and sixth dimensional history records are held. And when we've got the seventh dimensional in Antares, there's just different ways of holding information. Seventh dimensional is held in sound. I think this is more like pictures, morphogenic fields. So it literally is holding these records in holographic discs of light. And these records are the guiding forces of our lives. And literally, we can find our present life plan and correlated past lives. We can ask questions here. We only get answers when we're ready. But this is all here. I mean, we can have experiences with this. The green, the Anran community, represents and teaches pure heart qualities of empathy, compassion, unconditional love, helps establish Christ consciousness on earth. And then, as I mentioned, the central sanctuary is like an entry point where you can ask questions and be pulled into a different community based on, if you're ready or to be shown something, that community will have a different kind of like response based on what they, what their orientation is. I'm sorry,
This
I'm going.
is a very important star for the Mayans too, as me and Bella were learning in the Mayan Time and Magic course, that Alcyone is another sun in the Mayan system that you can align to. So it's kind of, I think it's an important part of our future, Leslie, somehow, our connection to Alcyone as we become more aligned with the cosmos in general within ourselves, but also here on planet Earth. I feel like Alcyone is going to come more into our collective awareness for a variety of reasons that maybe are not completely obvious yet.
Yeah, because I think in this whole idea of the cosmic rearrangement, the galactic rearrangement that Bayonako say we're really poised for, yeah, we're coming into a different relationship with Alcyone, I believe. And just to show you that human life cycles on Earth are guided by these communities, I mean, these are energies that work with us. So from 0 to 7 years, we've got the Mott community, the red community. They're and that's very much the physical body, and also their emotional body. It's implanting our roots and our connection with the physical body, strengthening our root chakra, receiving the first codes of our emotional body. And then in the second 7 years, the codes of our life plan begin to unfold. That's the Fought group that help manifestation, right? And they help us explore and try possibilities at that range of life. In 14 to 21, the Ra community that's we could say that's when Solana kind of broke out, maybe, I don't know, in the adolescent. It's strongly dominated by the solar chakra. It's an important time of ego and personality development. This is where our karmic patterns begin to unfold, bringing all kinds of storms and drama, right? And then 21 to 28, the Anran community, we're developing and maturing our heart chakra, and we're starting, hopefully, to move past, this is what the Anran community is helping with, past ego battles into understanding of love. And then our second Saturn return, we basically get guided through these 7-year cycles in a pattern like this.
I was going to say, of course, at 28, we have our Saturn return, right? So it's almost like that restructuring process kicks in again. It's like, okay, we've just done the first set of structures,
Exactly.
and we're going to do another set.
Exactly. So now we're going to go through the other Pleiadian stars, and I'm going to tell you, like, what are they in their light and their realization? And we will be covering a little bit of what the shadow was right now, and even when we look at Pallas Athene, because that's holding the shadow that really took some of these Pleiadian stars. Now, we have Electra there at the end of Taurus. In Solana's mind, this was his sister that he personified as Venus, just all that incredible feminine beauty and harmony. But what Electra was before she was breached and despoiled, just pure innocence, unlimited openness, unhindered imagined desire. It could be wild and passionate like a lava flow, could be lost in the moment with the softness of a kitten. And it never, ever occurred to her that anyone or anything could overcome this whole sense of light in her being and that she lived with and caused her harm in any way. But the fall of Electra is, we've mentioned it before, very intricately involved with the angels and the dragons and the male serpents. Basically, we'll go into it with Pallas Athene, but basically going to say that she was breached, she was despoiled, especially in a sexual way, because her great tantric abilities to realize union were used by the fallen who didn't have the dimensional reach anymore, and they would basically use her light body to get what they wanted. It was not a nice thing. Putting down, putting kind of seals in the auric around the pelvis. I mean, we still see it. The daughters of Electra, the whole goddess energy that's been reclaimed, still comes to and really tries to work with women on Earth. We still see women who get in a pattern that we just don't understand, if it's us ourselves or a friend or a sister. Like, just let some guy dominate him. But it's very much playing on these energetic auric fields that just aren't released yet. So it's good to have consciousness of it. And the whole symbol sign for Electra in her return and her beauty, I'm sorry, is
it's the lotus flower.
Is the lotus, because the lotus grows out of the worst of the mud. It's anchored in mud, right? But out of that mud comes this opening beauty. And that's what we need to understand. Okay, going on to Taygeta. Taygeta at the end of Taurus is a great angel star of sees the roots of everything, such deep healers. But there is a backstory. These are angels that had to be given Taygeta as a new mission, actually by Alcyone. They were hurt very deeply as guardian angels at one point. So hurt so much as guardians that they didn't have the confidence to be guardians, and they were repurposed as the deep healers because they could see into the roots of everything as guardians. And they did wonderfully until the deep, dark night. They started falling into the depths of the spiritual ego, like not understand the spiritual ego is a whole 3-step cosmic process. It's like the descent of Lucifer. When you just start feeling like your power is bigger, superior, they started getting, it's like actually what happened is their latent wound of being guardian angels came out in some form, and they needed to feel superior, and they started not being kind, essentially, to the people they were treating. They like being impatient. Why are you not understanding what we're telling you, you know, and trying to do things for them. They literally, in the deepest dark, at the deepest point of the spiritual ego, they all went blind on this star, and every child born to them was born blind. They needed a lot of resuscitation from a lot of galactic help, including Alcyone, and they're back. This is like the angelic healer who can see to the deepest spiritual roots in us. We looked at Merope last time with the Uranus and Jupiter conjunction, because this is actually Solana thought of Merope as Uranus. Uranus as Merope. It's his sister, who is just like him, so like Aquarian, and I just need to go and explore and experience and have my own imagination, creativity, emotional freedom. It wasn't a malicious thing, but she went out and basically went through stages. There was the rebellion. I don't want anything from, you know, any order. So the rebellion, the leaving, the long experiencing, finally coming into a stage of realization, hey, wait, chaos isn't creativity. It's not necessarily productive. Things I'm doing aren't necessarily serving the whole. Then there was a stabilization stage, when there was an understanding that actually there's a galactic order. There's cosmic laws that have their own purpose and their mission and their sense. And we're meant to kind of create the golden mean. We're meant to find the balance between our free will and choice and the whole cosmic order. And actually, Merope is so beautiful. The star didn't exist, but Alcyone created the star when they matured and were ready to have a home. And supposedly it's just an absolutely beautiful place, where it's literally like anything you want to dream into creation and beauty is like there. It's like, okay, the spirit of freedom and creation is there, but in a very mature way, because they now understand from their journey that it works to have cosmic law as like the bigger ecosystem. They have complete freedom within it and complete creativity. And it's a win-win for their own selves, and it's a win-win for everybody. They're not hurting anything because they're operating within the principles of cosmic law, which are basically, most broadly, divine love, divine law, divine mercy, and divine will. But there's a lot of other cosmic laws. So then we've got the star Maya at the end of Taurus. And this is a dolphin star, and the dolphins are very close to the divine mind. Their songs, their voices emit the frequencies of love. They sing the songs of love, which is not an emotion, but it's a frequency quality of all the galaxy. Of the divine is just holding everything in love. But Maya is recognizing, it's singing the voice of the healing of life. It's basically saying, we know that there's profound wounds that happen in life, because interestingly, Maya goes through the dark night only about 240 years, whereas we on Earth go through 11,000 years. The Mayan aspect of our being while in the dark night has the ability to watch the wounding that happens from the dark. And they're like taking copious notes. They're in it. They're seeing how it feels, but they have enough objectivity to take the copious notes and start saying, oh, wait, this is the frequency of the wound. Here's a frequency that would heal it. So that's why they can touch this part of ourselves. We're healers from, if we have a Mayan sensibility, can touch the emotional patterns behind the pain. The symbol is the eternity symbol, the fact that nothing is ever lost. It's the great Hunab Ku of the great central source in the Mayan. And the interesting thing is the star Maya always enters the light of the photon belt when the Earth does. So it's almost like, what a divine gift that it's literally like releasing the frequencies of healing for the darkness we've been through right as we enter the photon belt. So we can look around us and see, oh, the new impulses we get to try this. We're starting to realize, scalar waves. And of course, we've had, homeopathy and all that, but it's all sort of making more sense now. Essences, plants, flowers, everything has a frequency. Wait a minute, these are healing sources. So next, those are our 5 Pleiadian stars, huge invitations to light. We have to be aware that Algol is at the end of Taurus, and it has a 3.5-degree orb. So it's on Jupiter, it's on the sun, it's also on Venus, and it's on Uranus, okay? So we're going to look at this a little bit. Algol has 2 expressions right now. It's a 4th-dimensional expression, a potential of a 6th-dimensional expression. It's probably the darkest star in the galaxy. It's frozen light. As its higher expression, it's actually the 8th and final initiation of the dragon warrior, the dragon warriors who are charged with upholding divine law, the divine mind. And the initiation is the responsibility to actually take something out of life, to be the hand of the divine executioner. So it's a very big responsibility, and you have to really understand the first 7 initiations of knowing how to move the elements and the motion of everything. But I want to suggest something here. With these stars, it's not just about out there. Oh, there's something malevolent force hurting the galaxy, and I'm charged with cutting it out. I mean, yeah, that can be part of it. It's literally inside of us. What is it that is not serving the life in us? What is it that's not serving us going forward to our fullness, to our manifestation? So I think what you call Algol in its lower dimension is the misuse of ruthlessness. It's actually a very deep descending channel of the fallen angels, because when the first war of the angels happened, which created all these polarities, which is probably a product of the divine mind, all the angels don't die, but in being slashed, they would lose dimensionality and consciousness, and they'd fall to Algol. It's kind of a graveyard of fallen angels who are lowering consciousness, kind of ghoulish. It's here where there's a lust for power that tempts and corrupts one's soul. Then later, Algol, at the second galactic war, we've had several galactic wars, we've gone over in the past, but there was a black magic act of merging the fallen angel leader with the fallen dragon leader, and a Satan type of hybrid vehicle was born of that. And that's the influence we feel now we're kind of in another spiritual galactic war probably, but it's all these influences. Now we have to remember though, Algol is a potential channel of rebirth, and we're going to get into that. There's a lot more to look at with Algol, and a lot of words here, but let me try to summarize it. It's coming through these 4 planets, especially the sun. So that's just a real huge point of consciousness. So we have to understand that originally the divine mind, or there's a divine plan for everything. And the Holy Spirit holds the divine plan for a given star or a planet in the center and radiates out a kind of morphogenetic field so that that divine mind is what that star or planet is about. So Algol was actually created by the divine mind to be a star showing light versus shadow. It was appropriate to show a falling. But then the idea of the divine mind, the plan was, well, we'll bring the fallen into Beit and Kados, a galactic retribution center, chamber of mirrors, a timeout. That exile will help us understand, and they can be reborn. And it will become a whole story of redemption. Algol will be like a an imprint of what the divine mind has in mind. Oh, you can fall, but I'm going to take you back. It's the promise. But some beings didn't accept redemption, as we know, and they were released again because the larger galactic council said, they're not going to learn anything here without more experience. And these are really the shadow perpetrators that, when they come, the shadow perpetrators, we have to understand, when they're taken into Bait and Kados, have a very broad, even 8th dimensional consciousness that's just contracted down to the 4th dimension. It's not fun for them. That's part of why they misuse, Electra and try to climb her light body. But some of them didn't accept redemption. And they actually first appeared in the solar system on the astral plane, later manifested in physical form on certain planets, including Earth. So what we need to take from this is, if we're feeling identified with light, if we were going towards the tunnel and the light, and we understand that, it's actually really a serious mission to choose the light, because we're working for the redemption of the dark forces, meaning that they could come around. The light could be born in them. It's there. And we also need to understand, we tend to think of the shadow forces as, oh my God, get out of here. They're terrible. It's actually just a reflection to us of what it looks like not to take an initiation in the divine organic matrix. At some point, we were afraid to follow a cosmic law and let go, take an initiation, go into renewal. When we don't go into renewal, what does it look like? Your dimensionality decreases. You don't have the same kind of organic feeding. You have to take energy from others. So as much as we need to sometimes know that there's our sort of ruthlessness, there's also something about understanding this is part of us. And Bayonanico say it's really about just having one more drop of light on our planet, because the laws of our 3rd dimension are really hard. Equal, opposite, light, dark. Do something really light, dark arises, vice versa. So we need to lean into the light. But the thing we need to understand is the tension on the inner core of Algol is so extreme now with the nearing of the ascension, because, and the ascension isn't only an earthly process. It's not even just a solar system process. It's an extensive galactic retuning, which is going to affect multiple great cycles of life. But let's go to the next one to finish on Algol. If we have to understand that, because it's not just the light of the stars coming to us. What we do, especially on the density of the 3rd dimension, feeds back. So anytime we choose and make kind of victories in the light with our own karmic patterns, we're helping Algol as a sentient being choose the light. And that's a reattunement process that concerns the Earth, as I said, the solar system, the Pleiades, Sirius, and more. And that means that our whole arc of us can go through the fulfillment of our fate, which that fate there's a whole bigger fate. We have our individual fate, a solar system fate, a galactic fate. And we could literally go into the experience of the ecstasy of turning everything into the light. And that would sustain life on Algol, because the Holy Spirit wouldn't be in tension anymore. It would be in line with the divine mind, the return to destiny. It would represent a completion, a realization of destiny, which we're all trying to go for. But if it doesn't happen, destiny becomes a fatality, and it's a final judgment is basically delivered, and Algol will explode. And that, it doesn't mean we wouldn't have the cosmic rearrangement, but it would just be kind of an energy imprint that would be unfortunate. We could do it in fullness and higher if we can bring Algol back. So that's part of, we're invited to meet the light for this reason. The fallen are being invited to meet the light. There's word that some some beings are seeing the light. I don't know what's happening there. And you could probably talk more to that, Davyd, but
You know what, Leslie, actually, just on that point, I just want to share something. I was just listening to all of that pretty intently, because one of the beings that I perceived that was being dealt with during this 40 days was the hybrid being, who I perceived anyway, and other people may disagree or be able to confirm this, but I perceived actually entered back into this realm through the eclipse portal, but was actually being waited for. Unlike previous attempts, this being has used eclipses, I think, many times, even used the female body to enter through portals and wormholes and a variety of ways to come and go as it wanted to into this realm, and had caused a lot of problems in this realm for a very long time. And so what I understand was a decision was made at some level to finally capture this being and put him into Beta and Katos, and thus in doing so would free all of the other fallen beings who had contracts with this being, which includes many human beings in their fallen angel, fallen dragon states. And I feel, it's just my hunch, and many people might disagree with me, but this is what I've perceived over the last 40 days, is that it's down to the individuals now. There is no more dragon being, there is no more Khan with his marks of slavery on us, there is no more contracts of witchcraft with the fallen angels, the satanic beings. They have been removed. And so now it's a simple choice for the individual, without any level of intimidation or manipulation, to make a choice for the light. And personally, I feel that this is where Algol hangs in the balance now. It's like the obstructing forces that were frightening us beings down here on planet Earth, because there's a high level of intimidation for sure. I've experienced it myself from some of those beings, to do what they want you to do. But if that's been removed, there are no more excuses anymore. There's no more, hey, I'm being coerced into doing this. Now it's my choice. Do I choose to still be in my fourth dimensional Beta and Katos Hall of Mirrors, where I'm projecting the reflections coming back at me and saying it's everybody else's fault that I'm in this mess and I can't connect to my higher self? Am I still lusting after power and trying to take it from other beings who I perceive to have that power? And really, in the end, I think that that's the big trap of that fourth dimensional lust for power, is that it's a mind thing. It's like, hey, I think I can get to a higher dimensional state of consciousness by taking it from somewhere. It's like, no, it's already within you. It's in your heart consciousness. All you have to do is go inwards, and that is the release point. So I just wanted to share that. I mean, it's just my perspective, Leslie, and maybe you might disagree with me, but it's what I've observed over the last 40 days that is the actual choice point that every human being now has, free, finally, from the beings that would perhaps have prevented us in the past from doing that.
no, I would tend to agree with that. And I can even say it's very much in concert with this year, 2024, in the Stellar Nations cosmology. We have the return of the great feline as a warrior nation guarding free will, and the return of the dragon nation guarding divine will. And I've done some videos on this, but what this means is in the cosmic scene, on the cosmic level, those two nations have gone through profound, just like the Pleiades, descent and ascent, and really on a cosmic level reached new understanding of cosmic laws, new integration of them, and profoundly beautiful energy patterns that take us out of duality. And they've been coming in, impressing on our consciousness. That's another thing that's happening. And it is literally what you said. It's the way of the higher warrior, not to be against one another or other things, but about your own, if you will. The sparring that happens is used to grow your own self, and what happens is that brings you into the center, because you're not going back and forth trying to fight something else. And it brings you into the center in a way that is, you can start to alchemically stabilize and stay there, because you use the shadow forces really like almost as nutritive food. Oh, that's a challenge to me. I'm not going to go against it. I'm going to take it in and become what I need to be in service using this. And that's exactly what the Christ soul did on the cross. We saw that in calling you. So it is really I think you're right. It's down to really our own, let's not be intimidated anymore. It's down to our own reckoning. And it's really, it's not that big. It's a big deal in a way, but it's about just, even why we're doing this show, coherency. Oh, these karmic patterns are there. They're in the solar system. They're galactic. Yes, we've taken part in it, but it's just all to wash out now, you know?
It's that
we're
word
go-
again, it's coherency. And I think that the way I would like to share this from my own understanding is that when we're caught up in our fourth dimensional selves, which is where these guys were also intimidating from, that's our emotional wounded self. And as long as we don't get triggered and we can rise above that and say, hey, I understand why I have a wound here, or why I feel like a slave, or why I feel imprisoned. I understand why all of these things, but that's not an excuse that I can use to perpetuate the situation. It's actually a fulcrum which I can use to elevate myself out and say, hold on a second. I don't want to be in this pain world anymore, where all I see is pain in my world. I want to step back from that. But that's a choice, and I think that it's a hard one. It's not an easy one to even come to that place of realization. So I do get that as well. But at the same time, if you really want to be a conscious, higher dimensional being, you have to conquer your fourth dimensional pain body. And yes, it's been intimidated, it's been manipulated, and all of the other things that we know. However, at what point do you say enough is enough? Because from a fifth dimensional perspective, you cannot be hurt at all. You're an eternal being. And so the whole fourth dimensional, like, hey, you're hurting me, this is something against me, is literally part of the prison that we've put ourselves into, because maybe we followed Khan as a dragon warrior, and we trusted him, and he betrayed us. And he not only betrayed us, he made us his slaves. And it's like, so we had this kind of excuse. So our leader told us to do this, and we were always in service to him. It's like, well, that may have been true, and that's okay. That's part of the story, but you no longer have to be in that place. In fact, that's not sovereignty. So we can understand the story without necessarily being attached to it as a reason for things still to be going on. And I think that is a really, really important part of what this Jupiter Cazimi, I believe, is offering us.
No, you're exactly right. And that's exactly the new pattern that the dragons are bringing in.
I feel it.
The whole release of this con, or if you followed con because you thought you were supposed to, and that's kind of innocent. It was a command. But I want to say, interesting, when you talk about the emotions, that is one of the mastery of the dragons, to master the emotions, and which is basically the water element and the flow of how we let things happen. I came to a realization when I was doing the video on our warrior codes, embodying them. I was like, emotions are, so that's motion, but it has an E on it. It's kind of bogged down a little. And I remembered back from Stellar Destinies, it talks about the constitution for the human that's held on Betelgeuse, for the human coming to Earth. And there's a whole long set of things we agreed to, whether we don't know it consciously, maybe. But it really emphasized that we are sensate beings. We are given the gift of the senses, and that is to interact with all this creation, the smell, the taste, the touch. But I started realizing, oh, wait a minute. I think we've been equating emotions with sensation and sensate, because we've lost that whole body sense. We've lost this contact with the earth, with the elements. And I think that's part of the pathway, for us back as individuals. It's a little further elucidated in another video, but yeah, I do agree with you on that fourth dimensional pain body that's emotional. And it's really not real. It's holding very deep, real wounds, but they're just not real anymore in the present. There's simply patterns that for some reason you think you have to hold on to. Well, part of
And
us we have a bad habit. We don't understand that the divine mind said, I will take you back. All you need to do is let go of that stuff. We're still caught in, once we get beyond projecting that it's everyone else's fault and we take responsibility, then we go into penance cycles. Oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm a victim of it. And we run those for many lifetimes. We cannot go through the ascension without clearing all that, because it is simply not, it doesn't resonate with the fifth dimensional flow.
it doesn't at all. And as somebody who spent a fair amount of time in the fifth dimension, particularly recently post-accident, and having to deal with, as I showed on the interview I did with Louise, for those people who saw that, about some of the effects of the dragon stamp and Khan's mark, I had to go to a deep place, even had to go into hospital to find that out and have it removed. But at the same time, there was a desire from my inner self to say, whatever needs to be cleaned up, cleared up, removed, dealt with, exposed, I want it to come up. I want it with all of my being to see it so that I can release it. And it's heartfelt. And it came up immediately. Once that kind of final piece had dropped in for me, there's still something you've missed, David. There's something that you cannot see. And there was no way I could have seen it. It was embedded in my foot. I couldn't have seen it. And yet in the moment that it was seen, it made sense of everything. So what I want to share is that as long as you stay on point, stay on mission to yourself, to your destiny, everything will get revealed in the moment that it needs to. But you have to be brave sometimes, and you have to have courage. But you also have to remember from your eagle's perch perspective that you are a multidimensional being, and not everything is the emotional body of the fourth dimension. In fact, that's only one narrow band where we feel pain. The rest of it is quite different. And so from that perspective, I would like to invite people to think about that and say, or even to meditate on it and say, how can I, rise like the eagle to the perch and observe myself behaving in situations? It's one of the tools that I've used for many years working with the mugwort plant. Actually, she's very good at separating your consciousness out so you can observe yourself reacting to situations and saying, well, why am I reacting like that? It's not affecting the other person over there in the same way. So why am I reacting in that way? And then it becomes a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that every time you react to something, let me just meditate on that for a while and see why that happened. And eventually it becomes easier. And so the forgiveness also comes, because otherwise you could end up in that other cycle of, oh my God, I'm such a bad being. I did this
No,
in
that's what
Egypt.
I'm
And
saying
I did
about
it
the
like,
penance. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And that's also not helpful. It's another hamster wheel that it can take a long time to get off of.
Right.
And, all of these things, they're all important evolutionary cycles. They're not to be judged as good or bad. And as the Dark has often pointed out, even recently, a video that came into my awareness, the Dark's like, it's all well and good choosing love, but if you're not choosing the right kind of love, if you're choosing that overly smothering kind of love that actually has fear underneath all of it, you're still making the wrong choice. And you need us as the Dark to be the catalyst for you to switch into unconditional love. So even the Dark understands the game and its role in the game, right? So Dark and light, they're always working hand in hand. And I think that that's also an important thing to perceive. It's not like dark over there, reject. Otherwise, we end up running the risk of rejecting some part of ourself that's in the dark. And that's also not part
No,
of
it's
becoming
just not
whole
going to
again.
work.
It's
It's a
not going to
tricky
work.
game.
Exactly.
Yeah. But everything you just said too about the emotional body, remember we have the star Maya working with us. It's right
Right.
because that's what it is. It's the healing. It's the singing the frequency of the healing of life.
Yes. I
Life
love
is
that.
always healed, so
Yeah.
that the bigger cosmic truth is the emotional body is a temporary passing. It's a learning stage.
Yeah.
So the other thing that happens on Venus and Uranus is the star Zorak. It's on the male serpent pathway, and it's just a point at which the male serpent had gained so much knowledge about, the male serpent's really about understanding, and the orbs of knowledge is about how to bring things into manifestation, how to harmonize them, and how to complete that cycle. It's a beautiful thing, but male serpents get really tripped up with learning that and feel very superior and start to want to use it as a domination over misuse of knowledge. There is something called the descent into the spiritual ego. It's a 3-step celestial process, actually. It's the fall of Lucifer modeled. It is the deepest, darkest hole that if you get into it, you're into for usually several lifetimes. It's a long pathway back. So Zorak is sort of here as a memory, let's say, on Venus and Uranus, right? I'm not saying they're on it. Sometimes the stars don't mean we're like, oh my God, I'm stuck in the spiritual ego. You're standing there almost like you say as a witness. Oh, look at this. This is what can happen. I know I don't, this is why I want to choose the light. The other nice thing on Uranus and Venus, which is helpful actually, is a Pegasus star, Sagan. And Sagan is the ability to understand that time, there's no such thing as time really, but on the third dimensions, it's a very structured context. It doesn't exist that way in other dimensions. And we are realizing that, especially with all these stars coming in, we're in the middle of a hologram, like you said, simultaneous thing happening. We can pull out different timelines. So Sagan is really about understanding that. It's about the ability as the Pegasus messenger to travel through all these different portals, literally kind of go to a timeline, say that maybe you need to help you now in this timeline and say, oh, I'm going to take that information back here. We need to plan it because it will help. Or go to the past and go, oh my gosh, that was really where we went off the rail. So let me kind of just see that and, not bring it forward. So Sagan is a very kind of trippy, fun Pegasus star, but I think it's like a little tool here for Venus and Uranus. I think it speaks really well, actually. And when we see the Venus Cazimi, it's going to be beautiful what she comes out to. That's in June. So I think really, I don't think this holding Algol and Zurich on these stars, I don't think is like, oh no, we're doomed. Let's not take the message like that. Let's just understand there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So now we're back to what I wanted to do is lastly is just look at the Pallas Athene.
Yeah.
So we'll run through that. Now, of course, it's so amazing at Pallas Athene. She is at the end of Scorpio, right? So this is our feminine warrior, right? She shows us what we're here for in life, our purpose, what we can fight for with determination, fearlessly. We can use our magical shield, right? So she shows up holding these really shadow stars, because Bungala in the Dragon Nation represents when on Algol, the dragon and the angel merged into the Satanel. It was a hybrid creature that was just bursting with kind of a physical sexuality. I mean, they didn't really have places to put all their dimensionality. So it came out through a sexuality, and they went to Bungala to have a home base to cast out tantric nets to like capture the daughters of Electra so they could use them to travel through since they couldn't anymore. So it's very not nice and mean. The female serpents, who are really the Electra was the daughters of Electra, were just taking up the cosmic line of the female serpents, which is a healing nation, and it's all about knowing the mysteries and secrets of the tantra through the body to create the union. Because the female serpent really understands the true wound is thinking you're separate. You're not. And tantra also has its application, and even Lemurian times were more tantric. You could feel you were part of the tree. You knew you were one with everything. But here, there's this two very fallen stars on the female serpents, because in response over time, after the female serpents were so defiled, and we talked about it in past shows, the great felines as the feminine were defiled, betrayed, pushed out of the galaxy. That's when our galaxy tilted yang. Anyway, finally, the female serpents had enough. Deshuba actually is like the equal and opposite. Well, let me go through. I actually have made slides for these. So
isn't it funny, Leslie, that it's the anaretic degree of Scorpio has that one of the most troublesome stars in the whole of the Antares.
Yeah. And I forgot I had slide for these, but here we have our beautiful innocent Electra, literally, just glommed onto. Unfortunately, the beauty of the angel and the compelling power of the dragon was what Electra saw. In all her innocence, she's like, oh my goodness, the divine is delivering this to me for my tantric lessons. That was part of her innocence, which is all the more harder. But underneath, they were really quite misshapen creatures. They were just using, what they knew from having been quite high beings at one point. They still had some of those magical understandings. So here's Deshuba. It's just entered into Sagittarius, but this is literally the feminine counterpoint to Bungala. It's like, you're going to do this to us, we're going to do this to you. We're going to freeze you. We're going to make you impotent. We're going to make you small. It's the feminine wiles to just desecrate the masculine.
I feel myself withering here already, Leslie.
You're what?
I feel myself withering into my seat. Is
Okay.
like, ouch. I don't think I want to be on the wrong end of that.
Yeah. Then the other Alpha Camellia, I don't know how to say it, but you'll see the chameleon is in there. It's Latin of chameleon.
Chameleontis?
Yeah, a very complicated history. Won't go into all of it, but it is the feminine that puts on the chameleon face, that pretends to be something else to win over and then kind of charges. But this star is a whole kind of fall into projection for the female serpent too, because the female serpent were duped by the male serpents at one point and caused Chiron to trample the bears, trample basically the heart of creation. And that's kind of, and then that was played out, this whole wound between the feminine and the Christ soul was played out, especially on Earth through the Vatican and everything. So, it's hard that Christ impulse has nothing to do with the church, but so many people, especially feminine, are wounded by it. And for for a very long time in this Camellia star, there was a very deep projection out against just kind of hatred also for the bears and the heart qualities. So it was a really wounded, ugly place to be. But the realization has come over time. You project enough, you finally start to see. But we are seeing the deepest of the shadows here.
You know what, Leslie, forgive me if I'm jumping the gun here, but it's like what we're seeing here is the projection of those emotional woundings from the opposite side of the zodiac, from the 29 degrees of Scorpio and around that is potentially, I guess, the unlocking of the algol situation also. It's like, how much of this wounding from the past are you still caught up in? Are you still projecting from? I mean, and it's not to say that some of it's not righteous or wasn't justified at certain points, but in the end, it's not actually beneficial to your evolution. And I think that that's the big key that humanity as a collective needs to get on board with. It's like, yeah, well, bad things have happened, and I've moved through that, and I now understand it's part of a much bigger narrative that has been part of my own evolutionary story. And rather than be angry about it, you say, you know what, everybody, thank you. Thank you for being an amazing part of this movie that we've all got to participate in. And there always has to be bad guys and always has to be good guys. And these are some of the bad guys, and this is what they did to us.
Yeah, but we're actually moving out of that paradigm. No, it's good you're bringing this up, you're making the correlations. But now I can also go, you can always refer back. There's tools. Oh, I have the sword of Matt that helps me determine what justice is in the true sense, not my ego sense of justice, but what wants to happen here for karmic balancing. Maybe it means I step out, actually, because usually divine justice, is going to take care of it. It actually is the end point, that we're not in charge of the retribution. Because cosmic laws will balance it. So anyway, you're exactly right, though, that we're seeing the interplay of the deepest shadows with the biggest invitation to light. But let's take this as the invitation to not be scared of these shadows, to, just like you said, understand them, let them be washed by the light. Let us understand, oh my God, it's not even just a personal thing. This is a whole galactic process that we've gone through as a larger consciousness. And there's a purpose.
Don't take it personally, everybody. We're all involved in this big story.
Yes, we are. Yeah, so stop blaming and projecting. And we have to realize in the end, we could not have gone on to our next fifth dimensional. The galactic rearrangement will pull us to a spiral arm, which is about self-mastery and co-creation. But had we not had an understanding of consequence of when we have spirit and matter so intimately mixed, I mean, that's what our whole galactic spiral has been all these millennia, about learning to balance the polarities.
Cause and effect, karma in action. It's what happens, you said, when you bring spirit down into matter. There is this one action creates a reaction, and so somehow inadvertently, I think we got ourselves into a particular spiral because we weren't really educated enough in this particular process. Whereas now we can't say that. It's like, no, we understand the dynamics of the container of the game. So we called it a simulation sometimes. I understand the rules now of the simulation of the game, or whatever it is that we're in, this cuboid of the universe, as somebody called it recently. I'm like, hey, so it's okay. We're always, I think even me and you talked about this, we're always in the game somehow. It's just, which game are we playing now? And it's like, get over the fact that it's part of the creative mind of great spirit. And this is something that he's given us the opportunity to participate in. And so enjoy it. But maybe now we can enjoy the game in a different way, where we get to be co-creators rather than being intimidated and manipulated. And now that we've got the vision to see that, and we've got all of these tools, including stellations and what you've shared with us, we can make decisions from a more mature, even adult perspective that allows us to step up and step out of that dynamic into something different.
That exactly brings us to the whole point of our little Netflix series here of Solana and us adulting and really realizing, hey, this is an important choice point, because we're talking about the movement, the realignment, but we're talking also very important to bring back Algol. So here's one more star that is on Pallas Athene. And this star was introduced in the year of the bears and has a lot to do with the Chiron wounding and all that happened with the male and female serpents. But basically what this means, what happened when Jesus came in as the Christ soul, he actually was able at that point, well, he was introducing a new frequency. The idea, the frequency was that there's a special place, let's call it the temple, but it's the fifth dimension. There's another way to hold your consciousness, and you can move to that. So he was starting that, and he had interactions with very lost dragon souls. I mean, literally people at that point. But, they were fighting against the Romans and revenge and all that, but yet they didn't feel good about it. And because that wasn't the real answer, they needed to elevate themselves. So the soul in Jesus actually met, there's one character called Jerome, created a whole line of warriors called Jeromean warriors. And the whole idea of, it's a new frequency. You're here as a warrior to guard the temple of this idea of Christ consciousness. And it's all that everything, it represents everything that lives in the heart and the heart portal. And you're guarding it so we can keep this heart portal open so we can access the fifth dimension. So there were 4 stars that were shown, and they're in the Lupus constellation, and 3 of them are just like incredible warrior loyalty. I'm there no matter what. This one's a little bit hard. It actually just plays right into what we're talking about with the emotional wound, because it's where the spear, in part of the story with what happened with Chiron and the great felines, hits the body of this guarding wolf who's standing there with heroic determination, but the spear hits near the solar chakra, just sucking the life force out of it. And there's sort of this response, a little bit of cowering from the wound, like a wounded animal will be very afraid and be in a corner. So that's also shown to us on the Pallas Athene. It's another shadow we have to get past.
Wow. Leslie, sorry, as you're saying that, I'm just thinking about how many people I know in the last 2 or 3 months who've been going through throat issues and stuff to do with the throat chakra even. This is the solar chakra, sorry.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm going to say Saturn is now on he's holding, Saturn right at the moment is holding, going towards the light, that the Phoenix star is still holding the big initiation star, piercing the dark, holding the Pegasus star that's at the bridle of the Pegasus, which is, it's the bridle at the neck of the star is here at the neck of the Pegasus. So it's a great ability to communicate the divine mind, unless you're bridled, hold tight by outside forces or beliefs, and it cuts you off from communicating that. So it's still kind of, here's the thing. We could be here for 3 more days, right? We always
I think I
know
was
that.
triggered because I was thinking about yarrow, which is a plant I've been working with a lot recently. Of course, who's the plant connected with Achilles, who learned from Chiron. And so many people have been suffering with the ability to speak out recently, throat issues and so on. But of course, that's also deeply connected to sense of self and solar plexus, which is like, well, if I don't know my sense of self, it's difficult for me to speak my truth. And I think that's one of the deepest woundings of all that humans have, is they don't really know who they are. And so they can't speak their truth, because it's like, how can you speak your truth if you don't know what your truth is? So it's kind of like a dual wounded there of the throat and the solar plexus. I mean, we've been heavily wounded generally. I think that's the message.
Right.
But now we can dare to dream of a world where we're not wounded anymore. And that's, I think, the biggest invitation of all is, do you want to still be wounded or not? You can put it into many other contexts, but do you still want to live in your wounded body, or do you want to be free of your wounding and your pain body? I think that when we bring it down to it, that's its essence of the choice.
And really, no, this is what I have for today, but if I just picked up the code, I could go to any place and keep telling the story, because it's holographic, like I just said, well, Saturn kind of supports this, because it's telling us we could be cut off at the throat, but it's saying, and Saturn, what is Saturn? It's that adulting male, it's it's what our karma or dharma, it's our dharma, it's our destiny in a sense in this story. So yeah, I just have this picture of us walking as very human, but through something quite magical that we can really immerse in and embody. And
Beautiful.
that's what it is. If our first return to the cities of light, the Pleiades, on ascended Gaia, ascended us, which is actually really about just taking all this in, which will also um, be changing the form of our planet. I mean, so much is going on. We're getting divine impulses. They come into the center of Earth. Oh, I forgot to say, in Solana's conception, Earth is Maya. Earth is, and Maya is all about healing emotional wounds. It's all about redemption. And so Solana finally set up Earth as the planet of redemption, really after a great cry out when Mars had life on, well, Venus had life on it, Mars had life on it, Maldek had life on it. Maldek actually exploded. And Solana, he's trying to learn how to control the solar system. He thought it was a state job, and he's like, oh my God. So Earth is meant to be this melting pot where we bring all the forces and the karmic wounds in, and we learn actually what the returning dragon and great feline are telling us this year, how to be different warriors. Like you said, use it as a fulcrum, any opposition as a fulcrum, not as something you go against, but something that you use to elevate yourself. And you're elevating yourself really right back into this whole cosmic ecosystem, which is what Merope understood. Like it could just keep going back to every star has its little gift for us. So we're just trying to make it a little more conscious with these shows. And that's all I would have right now. Okay.
Well, thank you, Leslie. I really enjoyed that. Beautiful presentation as always. And as you know, my charts, this one is particularly personal for me. So I was sat absorbing it all very, very profoundly. But I think the picture is clear. And I think you did an amazing job of hopefully giving something, a transmission to our audience that can be received. Because this is the choice point we're at. We can see the wounding. We can see the potentiality of what may happen to Algol. And that's, of course, it's going to happen somehow here on the planet too. If Algol explodes, well, then by fractal law, something will explode here too. And I don't think that's anything that any of us want. Now, I don't personally believe that that's going to happen. I think we've moved past that point. And I feel that it comes down to the individual choices. And I feel that at a collective level, we have made that choice, but there still needs to be the conscious awareness of it. And as we were talking about before we hit record, is that in the astral planes, there's not really anything holding up the narrative anymore other than the collective. The collective is holding up the very narrative that it wants to collapse. Why? Because it's kind of still holding on to mum and dad's coattails, saying, I'm a bit scared. I want to leave home because I don't want to be under your yoke anymore. But I don't know how I'm going to pay for my rent. I don't know how I'm going to cook my food because I never bothered to cook before, mum, because you always did it for me. And all of those things that we have to contemplate when we leave home at 18 or whatever age around that point. And we're at that point again. And it's like, hey, actually, once we step outside of the front door and get in, I remember going to university and feeling this, stepping outside of the front door and having that moment of apprehension of, like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And then getting into my mate's car and us driving off to London at that point to go to university and suddenly going, oh my God, I'm free. Isn't that exciting? And for sure, I think I probably ate kebabs for the first week that I was in London. Didn't cook, I don't think I cooked much at all for the first year of university, like most people. But at the same time, it's that sense of like freedom, and nothing against my parents or my family or anything like that. But I think most of us go through that point of needing to leave home and experience life on our own 2 feet. And I think that that's what we're being offered here. And the sun is showing us that it's brave enough to take that journey and wants to assist us in taking the same journey. And so we can also transform Earth from the more prison planet slave colony system that it's been under for so long with all of the mafia boss cartels. And now we can transform it into heaven on earth, into the Eden that it was always meant to be in the original blueprint. So the sun is also giving us this blessing. And I think what's really beautiful on the full moon is that we have this kind of Venusian kiss, we can say, on Jupiter at that 29th degree, which is like a, hey, did you get this yet? This is the blessing from the Venus energy of the heart, of the abundance, of creativity in Taurus with Jupiter. It's like, we couldn't make it any better for you guys. All you need to do is acknowledge, I think, release the wounding and say, I no longer wish to be a part of that frequency. And that's it. And then make conscious decisions every moment thereafter where something comes up that could take you back into that frequency. I no longer subscribe to that idea. I'm going to take a different approach. And it's a conscious decision, and it does require a bit of effort, but after a while it becomes natural.
But we also, like, So I just took off on my thoughts of going to university. I misused
Sorry, I'm
my
sure everyone did when I
freedoms.
said that.
I misused my freedom so radically in the first 6 months, very, very wounding to myself. So what I'm trying to say is, oh, well, that's a good example of Merope. I was like, oh man, but what we're walking a thin line, and we do need, what I like about this cosmology is we just get the constant like reminders, literally from ourselves, if we're starting to know our code. But we're getting the reminders of what the cosmic operation principles are. That's the other thing. We need to get out of a planetary consciousness. We're literally in an incredibly intelligent cosmos. There's all kinds of things that are relational, like you would call the fractal lines. And yeah, and I'm just going to put a plug in for Stellar Destinies, which was released last
Please
week.
do. Yeah, absolutely.
Because that really, it's just such a good read. And
Yeah.
it's just our cosmic history, and it really illuminates all this. You can just nest in that understanding and then go from there if you want to start learning your Antares codes or something. Anyway, that's all I have today. I think we said it all. We really have to do it.
We do. I think that that's the message. And first of all, thank you, Leslie, for the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Secondly, congratulations again on the re-edit of Stellar Destinies. Absolutely recommend everybody to have a look at that. But also, if you're watching this show and wondering how to get into Stellar Nations, please do check out, first of all, the original volumes 1 and 2 on the Stellar families. Please also think about getting your Antares code. And we also now have a special offer, Leslie, on QPW for the next 10 days until we
Starting
get
on
to
the
the
18th. Right.
yeah, starting on the Uranus Cazimi yesterday and running up to the full moon, we have a special 20% offer on anything on QPW, which includes the Stellar Nations pathway. So this is a great time to jump in. Also, just to flag up something that me and Bella have been putting together recently, which is going to be launched on the 17th of May in conjunction with the Cazimi the following day, which is a navigation guide to quantum consciousness and atlas for New Earth, which really brings in lots of the different teachings that we've been working with that are in our own lineages, particularly the Mayan lineages, but also with the plants a little bit, and also with Stellar Nations, to create a kind of a 13-part book, we can say, of transmissions that will allow people to understand how to work with this new energy that's coming through on this Cazimi. What we are rolling out now is really a pathway to what's coming next, and it's creative and it's fun and it's of the goddess and it's different and it's less focused on the healing. We want to move away from the realm of healing. Yes, that's still important if you still have things to release, but the more that you keep yourself looking for things to heal, the more you're staying in that frequency. Invite in totality of self, and you'll be surprised at what can be released, Leslie. And I think that that's what the sun is also offering us right now, is that incineration and transformation of the density that we may still be carrying on our field and want to lighten the load. And if you don't want to lighten load, that's okay. It's also a choice, right? There are other destinies in the universe that you can go and experience. And again, it's all experiential. So just wanted to flag those two things. Also, Bella's Mind, Time and Magic course is very much imbued with a lot of the energy of the stars and how to work with this. And of course, Maya is one of the stars in Stellar Nation. So there's lots of different ways to work with this, everybody. But Leslie, do you have a final comment for this Cazimi and the full moon before our next show, which I suspect is going to be the Venus Cazimi, but we
Let's
didn't
do the
decide
Venus
that yet.
Cazimi, which is a nice message. No real final
Right.
comment, except if we can take this in and really realize this is about us, our internal self. These stars aren't out there, essentially, they're inside as well as out there. I don't know how it works, but it's all kind of magical. And I think it's time that we can move into that with some assurance and a smile. And yeah, with what you said about the astral field, ever since the eclipse, I've been experiencing, I feel like there's a part of me that's much more consciously involved on sort of an astral level in with other beings and light beings, and that we're doing things. I think a lot's happening when we sleep, or even just, it's even in my conscious mind. Sometimes I'll be doing something and I'll just sort of have like almost like a peripheral view of a timeline and something. And I don't need to grasp it. It's not like something, it's just about, I think we're expanding into kind of a totality somehow. But I think the nice thing to know is I feel like on the astral level, there's sort of a light influence of those of us who are feeling like going towards it, that we're actually having the experience of doing things together in that realm.
Yes. I completely agree, and I've had the same experience since the eclipse, and it's actually changed me a lot on my inner space. There's so much more light, there's so much more space than even before, and you know, it's not a space that was unfamiliar to me, but it feels different now. And like you, I also feel the amount of help is vast, but also I can perceive when there are jumps in the collective, because it's like suddenly more light appears, and I feel more beings have gone, oh my God, like what's this all about? And I've had 3 or 4 of those since the eclipse, and each time, and we've also had to cross a couple of bad moments, like the removal of certain mafia bosses, the fallen ones, somehow still causing some troubles. But now that they're gone, I feel that that was a big part of what our Stellar Nations ancestors and cousins and so forth wanted to assist us with, because we invited them in. It's like now there is space for you to fully release and to fully heal without fear of reprisals, which I think has been there before a lot in the past. And so we have a collective safe space in which to heal right now. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think that that is going to be part of the catalyzing energy that this particular Cazimi offers us, this full moon in Sagittarius offers us, and the Venus Cazimi. And so the energy is going to continue to roll out. We may have to watch some of the more difficult things around us collapse for a while, but in the end, it's also for our own good. And sometimes things that are challenging are actually the things that give us the most growth. And so I just want to share that too. There's nothing to be afraid of, anybody, whatever you may see happening on the TV. It's still part of the illusion that we're in, and some of it may be real, some of it may not be real. But unless it's directly affecting you, I wouldn't give it too much attention, to be honest. Deal with the things that are coming up for you in the moment that they come up, and that's it. Stay in the moment, stay in the now, as our good old friend Dandelion always says, because it's the only thing that truly exists. And the more that you come into the now, the more that you, weirdly, I don't know if you know this, notice this, Leslie, but the more that I've kind of relaxed into now, the more time I seem to have.
I know, it's so ironic. I
Isn't
just
it
feel
ironic? I seem to have
like
time to
it's
do
been
anything.
4 months since the eclipse. And
Right.
and just to, you just said this, but I will reiterate it. You know, we come on and we say, oh, the light and all this. Remember that what Venus or Electra got in trouble just by believing in the light only. I'm not saying to believe in the dark, but I'm saying if things happen in our third dimension, which they likely will, we just has to persevere and keep, we're like becoming agents of holding this portal open. You know, we're
Yes.
calling it forth, we're holding it open. If we feel that responsibility, it's just our mission, our duty to, you know, meet everything with love and observation, but hold open. You're not being naive. Hold open. That's what the whole star Alderman is about, which is on the North Node and on Mars. It's about the cosmic human seeing, oh, wow, this is real. And when we get through the ascension portal, in fact, we will be greeted by the aspects of ourselves that literally look like totem atoms to ourselves. But if we know that, oh my, there's a dolphin, there's a whale, you know, that like surge forth with it. You know.
Yeah. I think that's it, everybody. It's real. It's as real as anything can be real, I guess. And that's becoming more and more of a subjective, I think,
I know.
point of perspective right now. And I think that that's also good to remember, is that truth is a very, very perspective and relative thing to understand. And we have to come to our own truths about situations and not push them or absorb them even from other people or other situations. So as we move forwards, Leslie, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this episode as always. We will be back for another episode of Cosmic History Codes very, very soon, probably for the upcoming Venus Cazimi in a few weeks' time. I think it's in a month's time, actually.
I think it's June 4th, so we can
June the 4th.
talk about
So
it
we'll do
about a week
this
before,
before
maybe.
then. Please do check out Leslie's Stellar Nations channel on YouTube, where there's other videos. And I know that you have a website coming up soon. All of these links that are available right now will be put in the show notes, along with the special coupon code for the discount on QPW right now. Please do take this opportunity, everybody, to jump in. You know what? I mean, it's not as complicated as it looks. The Antares code is actually a lot easier to read than your natal birth chart. I do have to say that. So don't be afraid of what looks to be a complex piece. This is a beautiful cosmic story that, as Leslie said, is a holographic representation and can be entered at any point from any direction and is still going to be coherent. And we could be doing this show for another 20 years, Leslie, and be telling the same story, but in 20 different ways.
It's
And
to
it'll still
your
be
last
interesting.
breath,
Still be
right? You can interact with your code to your last breath. And what I like about it, it's really you talking to yourself. So you
Yes.
talk about perspectives on truth. Well, you really need to come into what your own truth is. And I would say, just to, we're going to end this, but what you're talking about, the discount is at your invitation for your cosmology section. I did an audio visual travels through each chapter of the Stellar Nation. So it's a good
Yes.
supplement to the book, or if you're just someone who can't read, some people feel they're dyslexic and it's just hard. This offers that information in that format. So, and then
It
we have
does. And
discussions about it.
exactly. It's very similar to what we do here on the Cosmic History Codes. Leslie makes a presentation, and myself and Bella originally, we did a little preview and a nice commentary afterwards to add to it. And I was just watching back some of them, Leslie. They're very interesting to watch a year down the road and to
I'll
even
do that
perceive.
someday.
Right, yeah, even to perceive how different we are as beings. And that's something else also to remember, is that we are all constantly changing and evolving. And I think we also should be careful not to hold people in past timeline experiences that we may
Yeah.
have had with them, because that may not be helpful for them. They may have evolved out of that space. And I think that's also something I wish to share at this time. Try and meet people where they're at now rather than where you met them maybe before, or maybe even situations or stories or truths. Try to be fluid and flexible, I think, are the
Yeah.
keys. So
Okay.
thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everybody. We are going to love you and leave you there for today. Enjoy the Jupiter Cazimi, enjoy the energies. And if stuff is coming up for you, enjoy that too. Work with it, because there's always an alchemical benefit and transformational gift, you can say, when you do the inner work. Spirit is very generous, I find, in that regard. And the realizations that come about yourself afterwards are often mind-blowingly profound, but you have to do a little bit of dynamic kinetic work beforehand. But you know what, this is the best time to do it. The energy is very fast, and yeah, if not now, then when, everybody?
Yeah.
I think this is the moment
Yeah.
we're waiting for.
You do that work and you invite the cosmic law of grace. And yeah, so okay,
Perfect.
we'll stop talking now, but I appreciate everybody for listening. And remember, we have the invitation into the cities of light, and they're actually there. And you may have a soul particle living on it right now.
All right, everybody, enjoy what's coming, enjoy the light, enjoy life, and we will see you again very, very soon for another edition of the Cosmic History Codes. Bye for now.